I often get asked this question. People say, look, we understand that our stuttering happens because of fear. When we're not afraid, we don't stutter, and everything that comes with it, like freezing up or getting tense, just doesn't happen. We feel good. We don't think about it, so we speak freely, clearly, without any problems. What do I usually say in response to that? I decided to make a video in which I will provide answers to this question because in fact the topic is relevant. And indeed, some people think that everything is tied solely to fear and that this fear can be overcome. With the help of a psychologist, hypnotherapist, or psychotherapist, basically a specialist who works with fear in a general sense. But what do we have? In the end, a person turns to a specialist, let's say a psychologist or psychotherapist, who specifically specializes in fears, panic attacks, and similar situations. These specialists help people who stutter by sharing tips for handling fears and panic attacks, what, how, and why to do it. It becomes easier and simpler for them, boosting their confidence. A person opens up about tips and tricks for dealing with fears, for working through panic attacks, what, how, why. Thus, it becomes easier. They feel more confident with the psychologist. They start to feel like, wow, relief, energy, worth it. I'm going to get rid of my stuttering. In the end, he feels lighter. He feels, I can overcome stuttering. With positivity, he engages socially. With this specialist, he starts to feel like, wow, I have some relief, a boost of energy, hooray, it's all worth it. I'm going to get rid of my stuttering. And with this positive mindset, he goes out into society, he engages in communication, starts to communicate with various people. Maybe, again, the first 5 minutes, conditionally 10 minutes, in a calm feeling, in a relaxed state. In this relaxed state, he will be able to do well, maybe even speak clearly without stressing out. About nothing. He won't be thinking about what might go wrong. He'll just focus on the words and sounds. Minutes later, stress triggers hoped processes. He'll just lead with the words and sounds and he simply won't think about it. 5, 10, 15 minutes later, the first, second, and third somewhat stressful situations will trigger other processes that he was actually hoping for, which will definitely happen to him. After that, there will be a harsh, hellish setback, and the nightmare will start again. So let's consider what these processes are. The person started communicating for 10 minutes, and it went more or less well, in a normal inspired state. Suddenly, in a stressful situation, whether it's a simple, unexpected situation or an anticipated one, like buying something at McDonald's, or asking for the time, or being distracted by a car that stops next to you. I asked how to get to a certain address, to a specific street. At first you're thinking, well, like street stress people, right? And at that moment your mind is kind of drifting off. In fact, your mind starts drifting off, thinking about the fact that, dude, you might not have succeeded before, remember that. What you couldn't do many times before remembers that you couldn't do anything about it back then. On an unconscious level, a signal comes to you, stuttering returns, and you get this intuition that something might go wrong again because you need to respond quickly. Or you're thinking to yourself, what do I need to respond quickly to? Intuitively, just by reaction. But in reality, you didn't have to respond so quickly, and you start to freeze up just like before, maybe even worse. You get upset again thinking, well, like, you need to go back to the psychologist, the psychotherapist, the hypnotherapist. You're going back there again. The same story repeats. So you worked with him. Again, he's listening, yeah. Yeah, probably you need another session. You walk in, let's stop being normal. So, he explains to you, kind of calming you down, convincing you that this is a good psychologist, a hypnotherapist. He won't intentionally push you to the edge. He'll calm you down, telling you that you can do it, that you'll manage, that you're doing great with yourself. Chiki pomboni. So it's like, okay, your new state, you're inspired, you're relaxed, you're in a better mindset. And the psychologist gave you a few more life hacks. Or we just repeat the previous program. You go outside again there, conditionally, there 5, 10, 15 minutes, and you drink normally. And then suddenly you hit a speech block following the same pattern. We won't even come up with anything new. It's the same pattern as before. You triggered this process, so it's a quick situation. Quick. Your answer should have been, did you say something? Or did you not finish it? There was, I'm sure, your subconscious. You got this option where you're like, hey, maybe it won't work out. Maybe you'll hit a speech block again, and then you'll have to think and look for your crutches again. You know, somewhere you have to replace words so you don't look like a fool again, like some clone ready to go with 5 grimaces just to convey information, which scares people. I don't know what's going on with you briefly yet, but they don't realize that you're stuttering in the competition. Here we can also see hypnologists, psychotherapists, and psychologists. They often work with a general profile, usually dealing with fears, but they don't understand those speech errors. Yes, they don't know the technical information that people who stutter need in order to skillfully and effectively overcome these issues. These situations are important to avoid hitting a speech block and to know what to do and how to do it. Yes. They don't know the technical information that people who stutter need in order to skillfully and effectively overcome these issues. These situations are meant to help avoid hitting a speech block and to know what to do and how to do it. To see how one can achieve some positive dynamics, have you ever not stuttered at all? And sometimes just stopping yourself where you think it's necessary. They don't know this. They don't specialize in it. Unfortunately, they don't have that kind of experience. So, roughly speaking, in the field of stuttering, in the topic of stuttering, such specialists are mostly incompetent. Yes, they can work on your overall state. How can I relax you, inspire you for what? Cool, look dude, you don't have to be afraid, but let's be honest with ourselves. Yes, those people who stutter, and my team consists mostly of those who stutter and have this problem. Yeah, right now. When we're actually afraid, it's not just about talking to people, just a person, you know, but we're afraid of those speech blocks that might happen, and we fear that this is a negative reaction. We fear our response to this situation. We see that there might be blocks, and it's tough. It's not just tough. At another moment, I might tense up, making speech grimaces, while my opponent or conversation partners will be listening to all of this. They roll their eyes and look at me like, man, I feel sorry for him, and they cover their mouths with their hands to keep from laughing. But you don't want that. That's exactly what you're afraid of. So, stuttering, if you look at it from a certain angle, is not the cause, it's just the fear of communication. Yes, this is a consequence of not knowing what to do with those speech blocks. What can you do about the blocks? What are the problematic areas? And how? In an image, with the help of which it is possible to process, with the help of which it is possible to consolidate, with the help of which it is possible to develop. How can we become smarter in addressing this problem? And just knowing how to speak without stuttering. What you need to do and what you shouldn't do. Where were your past mistakes? What didn't you do? And so on. And similar things and so on and similar. Psychologists don't know this. They are incompetent in this. Let's move on. We also need to consider the fact that there is such a concept as basic things. So psychologists and hypnologists think that you already have it all figured out. They believe that you have a normal grasp of the skills. Like all other people, healthy people basically, who have approached them before. They think that you already have a good grasp of the skills for conveying information and speech skills, but do you really have those speech skills? It's like he's well developed in a controlled environment. For example, at home, you can communicate, push things forward or whatever perfectly. He speaks clearly, concisely, and with feeling, with purpose and structure. Okay, you can do that, but that's called a controlled environment. No one distracts you, and there are no distracting factors. He speaks perfectly, clearly, concisely, with feeling, purpose, and structure. Okay, you can do that, but that's called a controlled environment. No one distracts you, and there are no distracting factors. You just say whatever you want, whenever you want. No one distracts you, you don't have any distractions. You said it just the way you want it. But again, some people who stutter might stutter even when talking to themselves, or have certain pauses. Problems here actually too. It depends on a number of factors. So when a person who stutters steps out of a controlled environment, they struggle with not being skilled for everyday situations where people start talking to you quickly. In those situations, he will actually struggle with the fact that he doesn't have a well-developed, practiced skill for normal situations where they just start talking to you quickly. Not quickly, sharply, not sharply, loud, quiet, and so on, even in a tense situation. There's no such skill that you are 100% confident in. So, psychologists, hypnologists, psychotherapists, they don't. As a rule, it already assumes that this skill is embedded in you and that you need to work on it. The maximum is for you to feel better. So, you had a state where you were less stressed, less distracted by unfavorable factors, and less bothered by your own problems that you might catch yourself dealing with on some days. Basically, it depends on the behavior of other people, whether they are adequate or inadequate. That's a different matter. So, psychologists and psychotherapists don't even realize that the problem of stuttering is so vast. It's so vast and so little studied by them. So they don't assume that you need to teach a person how to avoid speech blocks. Like your own consciousness can be changed in the direction of normal thinking, like that of people who don't even think about their speech. How to do this? Not all at once, yes, but step by step, systematically and gradually. So, in a few steps. And if the stuttering is severe, then you need to take new steps. Yes, in a series of steps, like in 10 or even 100 steps. But it still doesn't happen just like that, like jumping over a bridge and that's it. You need to go across the bridge, meaning yes, you have to take it step by step. And the more severe the degree of stuttering, the more of these big steps you may need to take. It's normal, logical, and appropriate. This is already a global practice. The fact that it's a complex problem means it's unlikely to be solved easily, especially if the issue is mostly at a semi-psychological level. When a person is afraid, and it seems like it's not just about themselves. The reason is global, and as a consequence, it's also partly the cause of it. So there's really a mix going on here. Psychologists, psychotherapists, hypnotists, hypnologists, they don't even realize what they're getting into. Yes, they can suggest various useful techniques for relatively healthy people. For people who, let's say, don't stutter but are afraid of mice, rats, cats, dogs, or even jumping out of a plane. It's all about that. Daring to jump out of a plane will most likely require several psychological consultations. Yes, especially if you're really afraid of it and, well, you're genuinely scared because you think you might die. Some people won't jump at all. There are different situations, and it's like with common fears. Yes, psychologists, but again, good psychologists, psychotherapists, and hypnologists can work more or less well, effectively, and productively. And by the way, as an additional tool for the implemented program, it's only for their knowledge, their techniques, their experience, and competence that can help to qualitatively enhance any educational program. But again, this is only if they don't try to impose their expertise in areas where they don't understand. If they don't talk too much about general things like normal states, nerves, emotions, how to take care of yourself, and how to react to certain circumstances in order to feel that inner uplift, inner comfort, in order to develop normally and without problems? Yes, they can definitely suggest that. But in the topic of stuttering, again, I've already explained why they are unfortunately incompetent, and if they can bring some level of effectiveness, then unfortunately it will mostly be short-term. After that, a person might leave after a series of such situations, short-term. And then after that, a person might leave after a series of such situations. When there's a rise followed by a fall, a person can slip into depression. The thing is, he was still spending time with a psychologist, a psychotherapist, a hypnologist, but he was still struggling. Yes, it gave a boost for a short distance, but then, when faced with speech blocks and receiving signals from his subconscious like, hey, you might not be able to do this right now, he would fall back into those speech blocks, tense up again, resist it, struggle, stammer, scream, and end up stuttering again. So what do we end up with? Again, depression, again, resentment towards myself, my life, my experiences. Again, questions to myself, damn, why is this happening to me? Why? What did I do wrong? And so on and so forth. So, if someone wants to tackle the problem of stuttering solely with the help of psychologists, psychotherapists, hypnologists, or hypnotists, I highly recommend thinking carefully about that decision. Actually, after listening to this video and gaining insight into my perspective and thinking for myself about whether it's worth it, can people really rely solely on their competence, only their experience, only with their own developments, to help you solve this problem, to help you get rid of stuttering? Forewarned is forearmed.